So, what is it that y'all know about what happened in the 1980s, the 1970s, and everything else? Do you really think that it was as desolate as the TV shows and the movies make it out to be? Do you really think that people were not at all technically advanced in any way, shape, form, or fashion besides the constant propaganda that is always shoved down your throats and everything else? You need to talk to your old timers or any old timers and pay attention to what people say. Pay attention to the stories and what people did and what they do and how it is that it will help you and affect you in your everyday lives and future lives and everything else. So, who remembers in the 1980s whenever people and vehicles and such were being lifted up into the air and then dropped down over and over again repeatedly number of times in different cities and such? No, I'm not talking about something out of a movie. I'm talking about real freaking life. Now, I have no idea with what the chatter was uh, for any of it. There's a whole hell of a lot of the story, and there's a whole hell of a lot of TV shows and movies that you're going to say, hey, no, that's a TV show and movie. That's not actually real. Well, there's reasons why the TV shows and movies actually exist, just so that it'll be easier for me to try to explain these things that somehow ramble and come out of my mouth. This orifice that's under this welding hood. Um, Not many people talk about it. A lot of people want to drown their sorrows and everything else into drugs and alcohol and getting their minds into other things, constant distractions and everything else. So then they are not having to deal with constantly talking about it or thinking about it or thinking of any other possible repercussions or if those things could ever happen again, which that answer is definitely a no. Because my grandpa and my father are no longer alive. It was them personally that destroyed most of this planet with their extremely public war that raged between those two assholes since the end of the 1940s. Um, there's a whole hell of a lot more technical advances out there than most people know about, and most things, there's not most things, but there are a lot of things that are out there on the TV shows and the movies, which is why they're out there in the TV shows and the movies to get people's interest on able to make those things and then advance themselves and get more creative with other things. Hey, look, somehow I have to explain to the whole planet about how all of these things are true. A lot of these things are true. You know, there's a lot of storyline and everything else. Um, Most shows on Netflix happened. The ones that seem sci-fi and whatever else out there. We just put them in other countries. Change the settings a little bit, change the characters, skin colors, and such like that. Stories are real, and there's a lot of similarities out there, and people are noticing and realizing these things. And somehow I need to explain all these different shows as well, not just all the Marvel and everything else. It explains the story as to why it is that I stood up to the freaking psycho monster that was my grandpa and my father and stopped a very public bloody war between those two assholes. Um, so in 2025, I'll be telling a lot of truths, a lot more things. I'll be saying things more directly. I have no choice in the matter but to say these things and to tell people everything. Because a trade off for doing these things are saving many lives. Many lives are out there that are not hooked up to the internet or anything else, that feel like they've been forgotten about, and we're trying to get them much so as many services as possible, not just social services, as many services as possible with very low, actually very low, emergency supplies and such. And one of the things that we're doing at the Educational Resource Center, as well as Remote Alaska and everything else, are creating and making emergency supplies and other supplies that for everybody, then going and showing them how to make their own so then they can have export as well. So anyway, that's a little bit of the story. haven't done any videos for a while. I'm in a time crunch right now. Need to get a letter off to the Department of Defense in a few days before the end of the year. There's a lot of pressure on this one. I just wrote about 20 or more pages. My hand is tired today. Might be doing more because of the time crunch. And yeah, then I'll send this chunk of this massive chunk of this letter on to the Department of Defense on how to improve all these smaller areas all over the world, all over the place. Not just areas that people seem to think that I've lived. There's a lot of areas that people have no idea with where it is that I've been through. A lot of countries you don't know that exist that also need help as well, because the whole planet is tilting and everything is shifting and changing. So anyway, the Educational Resource Center in remote wilderness, Alaska, a whole hell of a lot of answers and questions will come up. Just try figuring out which one will go in the right order whenever those things will come up. And I'll be explaining a lot. There's a Facebook page, the ERC Alaska. It stands for the Educational Resource Center Alaska. Apparently there's already an Educational Resource Center. So this one for my Facebook land, I haven't really done very much with it, is the ERC Alaska. And there'll be just one basic simple question. Why is it that you're wanting to join the Educational Resource Center? We will be using ancient technologies and old technologies and things that actually make sense and work. Modern lights and everything else is actually what's causing everybody's cancers and brain fog and everything else, and we need to come up with better and more solutions. The only way to be able to get medical to people who live remote and rural, even further out than what it is that's currently coming to, the first thing that comes to your mind, was to be able to get them what we have as modern day electricity, which at that time frame, it was old and outdated, and everybody knew that it was highly toxic. But that was the only way to be able to get medical out to people who live remote, because of politics and religion. Don't you freaking know? So anyway, it's time to change these different ways and practices that we've been doing these things, and then we'll be able to have less brain fog, and then we'll be able to think clearer and better and such, and be able to see more and hear more and feel more and experience more and want to do other things besides just sitting there and doing nothing at all. Anyway, I hope you are all doing well. This time of year is difficult for everybody. Please find it within yourselves to choose to stay here, however it is in this dimension. You are more than worth it, and please help others to realize their own self-worth as well. We need you all here no matter what.